In our recent episode, Dee Maddox with DMX Consulting left us in awe with her journey of taking control, during COVID no less, of her career and launching her consulting business. Her insights into going all in and the importance of a supportive network during pivotal decisions were truly empowering. Dee is a powerhouse of wisdom and knowledge, and if you're looking for a dynamic speaker for your next event, she's the one you've been looking for. Now, we're excited to shift our focus to our next guest on Unplug with Mel, Nate Isaacks from the Springboard Center in the realm of business development. When I say that telling your story to inspire infinite growth is the reason why this podcast exists, it was looking for Nate. His narrative, akin to a Rocky-like comeback from adversity to fulfilling life he leads now, is one you won't want to miss. So stay tuned on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple for this remarkable episode with Nate Isaacks. Welcome, Nate Isaacks, to Unplug with Mel. I am so glad you got to come out and do this. I know the season and the holidays has been pretty busy. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come and be interviewed by me. I love telling people how we met in all of the podcasts because that shows the connection and networking. And so by me meeting Joe through Springboard Center allowed me to meet you through our local chapter Sherm Lunch and Learns. And that's when I got to hear part of your story, and it was profound. And I had been working on this podcast for a while at that point, and so like my list of people who'd ask, I loved it when I got back home. I was like, Nate Isaacks. So welcome to this, and
Thank you.
I can't wait for the listeners to hear your story. In this interview, I do not give the bios because you know yourself better than anyone. So who's Nate Isaacks? Where are you from?
So I'm originally from Los Angeles. I've lived out here for quite some time though, significant amount of years. Moved out here, moved back to California, different cities in Texas, lived in New Mexico. That'll kind of be a part of my story. But that's where I'm originally from. I was born in Pasadena, California, in Los Angeles County. And I was raised out there primarily by my mother. I have an older brother that I grew up with. I also have a younger brother and younger sister who I spent a couple of years with. Today, I am a 35-year-old married to a beautiful woman named Nate Isaacks. We have a 7-year-old little girl who's just my absolute, apple of my eye. She's just everything for me.
I adore her too.
She's a princess. And I work at the Springboard Center. I am currently in business development, and I'm excited to be taking on that role. I'm also working on my bachelor's degree, my BBA in finance at UTPB. Go Falcons!
Yep.
And that's a little bit about me.
A side note on that, after our conference and all that stuff, meeting Nate with Joe, it was probably a couple of weeks later, no, maybe a week later or whatever, when we realized we were in the same class at UTPB. He's going for finance and I'm going for management, and it was so funny when I got the text and it's like, Mel, is that you in the class? And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And so we were able to do a cool project together in marketing. It was
marketing, yeah.
And it was an intense class, lots of learning, and we pulled it off.
Yeah,
with
we
Jordan.
made a commercial.
Yeah, we made a commercial. And so shout out to Jordan.
Yeah.
But it was just that whole 6 degrees of separation. You never know who you're going to meet when you meet them.
Right.
And because of the networking that the local SHRM does here, meeting new people and stuff, it allowed me to meet you.
Absolutely.
And then to get to do a project, with it's unplugging in a way, because it's going to help our career in a way, but it's not, what we've been doing day to day. It was really good.
I'm going to trademark a Dragonfly smoothie bar.
I know. We're going to do it.
It's going to be a real thing.
We're going to do it.
Keep your eyes open for
Dragonfly
smoothies.
It was great
practice for me to use my gear, remember?
I do remember.
Yeah,
I remember setting up the tripod and everything. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Cool. Yeah.
So that's how we kind of know each other. And thank you for telling us a little bit about yourself. I love meeting people that are Midland, Odessa area is the epitome of transplant people. And so getting to meet these diverse backgrounds and what brought you here and all that stuff, I can't wait to hear more of the story on that. So the first question in the interview is just for you to go on a journey and tell us your story. Any significant setbacks or doubts and failures or even some victories in there. So Nate, what's your story?
So, it's obviously a really long story. It's my life story, but I'm trying to
still being written though.
Condense it. Yes. Hopefully, just the beginning.
Yep.
But to kind of break it down, I grew up again in Southern California, in the Los Angeles area, primarily to a single parent. My parents were separated. My father lived in San Diego. We would see him, when we could. He had his own things going on with his new wife, who struggled with alcoholism and addiction, and he had 2 kids with her, my little brother and sister that I mentioned. So it was difficult to get to see him, to spend a lot of time together. So my mom primarily raised us, and we were of a lower socioeconomic status, I guess if I could say.
We were poor.
We were poor. So
this is Unplugged. We don't have to politically correct here.
So, and I try not to throw that word around too lightly, simply because I know that there's always people who have it worse.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we had food and we had a roof over our head, so there's definitely people who have it worse. But my mom worked full time, and there was myself and my older brother, and we were involved in after school programs, stuff like that. But with my mom working so much and being so overwhelmed and everything, when she came home, I found myself kind of taking to the streets to find, whatever it was that I was looking for, a father figure, friends, just something, and this was before the day and age of, tablets, and we couldn't afford cable or, anything like that. So I just kind of, ran the streets and just ran amok, and it was through that early lifestyle that I initially had begun to find comfort in alcohol and drugs. And by the time I was 12 years old, I was drinking and smoking weed regularly. And so that had just kind of been the first, it's almost like a warm blanket, for the first time I was kind of comfortable. I was okay. There wasn't whatever it was that I was searching for. There was that level of comfort that I'd always kind of sought. Unfortunately, as drugs and alcohol tend to do, especially for somebody like me who struggles with that particular disease, it began to unravel and it began to spiral very quickly. Within a matter of years, I was on probation. It was escalating to heavier and harder drugs. By the time I was 16, I'd already spent a couple of years in some sort of facility or another, some kind of incarceration, juvenile hall, whatever it was. And when I was 16, my mother had discussed with my biological father for me to be sent here and to live with him. And so that's what happened. I was sent out here to Midland to kind of get a fresh start. But unfortunately, no matter where you go, there you are. And that was my biggest problem, was myself. It was my own, whatever was going on inside is what was really driving me. And I came to learn that later, that everybody's dealt a rougher hand, or so they've kind of got something going on within their own life. And it's really not about what you're dealt, but how you deal with it and how you handle it. But for a long time, I blamed things externally. I didn't understand, that my mom had her own struggles and issues, and my father had his own struggles and issues, and that they both genuinely did the very best that they could. And given the circumstances, I'm grateful for what they did do. But at the time, I was searching for whatever it was, and I continued to attempt to find solace in drugs and alcohol.
Was it as easier or the same way from coming from Los Angeles, California to Midland to find drugs? Because by that point, at 16, 17, you're street smart.
Right.
So were you more comfortable getting back out there and doing that versus trying to live underneath your father's rules?
So when I came out here, it's kind of funny that you asked that, because my whole life with my mom, I always kind of wondered, like, where I came from, why I was so much different than her. My mom is very calm and quiet and relaxed, and I'm not. I'm very like go and loud and wild and energetic, and I always have been. So when I moved out here and I moved in with my father, I met all of his brothers, right? All my uncles, and they would all hang out together. And it was kind of the opposite in a sense, because they were loud and wild and crazy and they liked to party. And so it was like, oh, this is where I come from. Like, these are my genetics. These are my people. Right, exactly. And we were loud and wild and crazy and all that kind of stuff. And so when I came out here, one side, yes, like it was more difficult to find, drugs or whatever initially, because I knew people there. Yeah. But if you know what to look for, like you said, street smart, you figure it out no matter where you're at. I mean, you can put me in, Antarctica, and I'm going to find it if it's there. Yeah. You just kind of start to pick that sixth sense. But as far as the rules went, my dad's house was a little more loose than my mom's, simply because my uncles were always over there and they were partiers. So that was kind of, my dad still wanted, like go to school and handle your responsibilities. And then, he was always more structured in that way. He could, get his work done, and he worked very hard. He still does, and he can handle all that kind of stuff. And then, party on the side. I never learned that. I could never balance that, because as soon as I pick up a drink or a drug, it completely takes over my way of thinking and everything else, and it's just full force and it doesn't stop. So that allows me to work hard legally as well. Yeah, absolutely. So in a productive,
unplugging in a good way. But.
Right. And like you said, so the limbic system, the part of the brain that actually controls, all the basic human functions, that need to eat, that need to not be eaten, that need to procreate, right? Yeah. So protection, water, food, that kind of stuff. It actually gets hijacked with prolonged exposure to drugs and alcohol, and it creates like this additional need for something. So like on this like subconscious biological level, you feel the compulsion to drink and use the same way you do to eat and to have a roof over your head. Wow. It's the same kind of thing. Yeah. So when exposed at such an early age, to credit to your point, when the brain is still developing, it's even more susceptible to being hijacked in that sense.
And not know how to become clean from it, because that's all basically from that point on, that's all you really know. That's what your brain, because it's developing. Right.
So they just touch on like the genetics behind it, right? So I come from a family of the same thing, a family of alcoholics and of all that kind of stuff. So the predisposition being there, and then the catalyst just kind of being the environment that I grew up in. It was just kind of this perfect powder cake to turn into what it did. But at that point at 16 at my father's house, it was still partying.
Yeah. Even so it wasn't a better environment for you.
Right. I don't think it matters what environment I really would have landed in.
You still think you would have rebelled to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you hadn't been actually properly cleaned. Yeah, I hadn't gone through anything.
Yeah. Well, and even before that, I had.
Oh, you had done a detox and stuff.
I had spent 9 months.
Probably through
in a court order facility.
Yeah.
Right, but I still was rebelling, and so I
it's
wasn't.
A mindset.
I wasn't. Yeah, I was going to do what I was going to do. I was already set on that course, and that's where I was. I was I'm still an extremist, but at that time I was an extremist in that way. I try to find myself more in the center today, but it takes a lot of conscious effort to get there.
I commend you for it all, and you brought something up to my mind about generational, genetics and stuff. My family also was a family of alcoholics and opiate users. Even my own father got tied up in the early 90s and ended up in an opiate addiction, just like the recent loss of Matthew Perry.
Right.
And his story was, when he wrote his book, I was like, wow. I remember my dad literally getting up in the middle of the night and going down to a black market way of meeting somebody for Vicodin and Soma, spending all of his check just to get that fixed, because he was in his mindset, he contributed to an accident that he had, and he needed it for pain, but because he began to treat the pain with more than the prescribed amount, there informs the addiction, and now you need more on top of that, more on top of that, more on top of that, and he couldn't stop until he got cleaned. And I watched that as a child, and I watched my grandparents be alcoholics, and difference of the thing is why I was watching the adults in my life do that. I never had the urge.
Right.
I never had the urge to experiment it or to go to the extreme.
Nor did my little brother. My little brother went the opposite. You know, he never got drunk. He never tried a drug. You know, he never.
He was watching you and what you were
right.
going through.
It's kind of a systemic, you know, situation. You know, generationally speaking, you know, there's an old saying of, you know, I drink because, you know, one brother says I drink because my father drank, and the other brother says I don't drink because my father drank.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of, it's almost a crapshoot.
It is a crapshoot.
And even at that time, you know, I didn't understand what, you know, what was going on, and there's this big misconception too that, you know, somebody who truly is an addict or is an alcoholic, that they are just purposefully destroying their life, and that they just don't want to stop partying, when the reality is the vast majority of actual, I'm not talking about somebody who's just, you know, going on the weekend, somebody who legitimately is struggling with alcoholism or addiction, a lot of times, you know, they do want to stop, but they don't know how, and they can't, and they try, you know, and it really wasn't until I wound up as a client at the Springboard Center that I learned all of the skills that I needed to, that I carry through today, that I continuously keep up with, and got introduced into the lifestyle that I'm able to participate in and stay sober and happy.
If y'all didn't catch that, I'm going to recap that part. He was brought into Springboard as a patient, and now he's worked the program to the point now he works at the same company. That platform, that whole organizational system that allows that, is just brilliant. It's an amazing way of supporting from the bottom at their worst,
right,
all the way to going, now that you are sober, we're going to give you tools to succeed in life, as well as a paycheck, a job, something to be proud of, you know. And so they saw something in you, and you worked your tail off, I'm pretty sure. But I love that Springboard Center here in Midland, Texas does that, because I had never really heard that before. I've heard people go through programs and get out, whether it's a 30-day program, a 60, 90 days, or even a year or whatever, and then thrown back into society, into the real world, not being able to be employed because of the gaps on their resume, or they don't have the support system with their family or friends, and so they immediately go right back to what they knew.
Right.
But talk about the experience in going to this final moment, this final rehab, and what you experienced there as far as, you know, doubt, failures, setbacks, and what was the victory in there?
So if I could, I want to lead up to that, because that was a lot of the, you know, exactly to answer your question. You know, so I kind of left off where I was 16. I had just kind of come out here. Things continued to spiral, continued to get, you know, use heavier and harder stuff. By the time I was 18, I dropped out of high school, and it was simply because, you know, school got in the way of my drinking and using, you know.
Plain and simple.
I wound up living out in Lubbock, and I lived out there for a few years, and that's where I became an IV heroin addict.
Oh, wow.
And so I lived that way for about 10 years, you know, trying various ways to get clean, to get sober, because for a very long time I really truly wanted it, and I definitely needed it. I just didn't know how. And so within that 10-year span, I mean, a few years in Lubbock, a few years back in Los Angeles. I spent some time in New Mexico. I lived in Ruidoso for a year, which is a very beautiful place, but was a very dark time for me. I'm taking my family, you know, full circle. I'm taking my family there for Christmas this year, here in a few weeks. And I was talking to Joe, my coworker, and he was talking about, oh, you know, don't you love this area here and that area there? And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I lived there for a year, but I did not leave, you know, my little apartment unless to go to work. And it's because I was, you know, tethered to this heavy, dark disease, and I couldn't get outside of that. So even in places beautiful as Ruidoso, it didn't matter. Just kind of, you know, lead credence to what I was saying earlier. It didn't really matter what my circumstances were, because it's an internal thing, you know, and I didn't learn that until Springboard. But there I was, back and forth, so on and so forth. So I've lived in a bunch of different states, different areas. I've had several overdoses. I've had multiple grand mal seizures, been in a bunch of, you know, treatment centers, jails, you know, you name it, you know, just trouble in every different, you know, direction. My body's actually resistant to Narcan, which is the drug that brings you back from opiate overdoses. I found myself in several psych wards, you know, one in Los Angeles, a couple in Los Angeles, just because the addiction struggle, that psychosis can mirror legitimate, mental breaks. And so that's just kind of how I spent my life, just like this dark, chaotic.
For what age? When you finally got to Springville, how old were you?
This was from 12 till 29.
So in just 29 years of your young life, that's everything that you experienced.
Right. That's all I had known. That's all I had known, was just trouble with the law, psychosis, overdose, homelessness, all the kind of dark things that you can imagine experiencing. By the time I was 29, I overdosed for the final time, and was taken to a hospital, and they were trying to revive me, and they couldn't. And the doctor was getting ready to call time of death. And one nurse said, "I'm going to try one more time." And they were able to resuscitate me. And when I came to there, I mean, you name it, wires and whatever else they have going on, and a room full of medical staff and a doctor. And I kind of started, to kind of come to, and they were checking my vitals, and they told me that story. She was like,
Gonna try one more time.
Yeah, we were getting ready to, doctors were going to call time of death, and we said we're going to try one more time. And I told her that. She told me that I didn't believe her. I was like, whatever, like okay,
you're trying, and you're still in denial.
Yeah,
wow.
I'm like, you're trying to scare me straight. It's not gonna. You remember that TV show?
Yes.
I'm like, that's not gonna work. You're not. Gonna, you don't know what I've been through. This is nothing. And so she pulled the blankets off of me, and my toes were blue. And I've never been that cold in my life. It was the weirdest feeling, and just something inside me had really broke. It was just this emptiness, this darkness, this bitterness. And now, mind you, at this time, so at this point, when I'm sitting in this hospital, I'm homeless, jobless, carless, pretty much friendless and familyless, because they didn't want to continue to watch me, kill myself slowly. And so I've got nothing, but that's okay, because I was used to that. This time, something internally, not all this external stuff, something internally was so different, and something had just gave way. That I was finally ready to have some kind of experience, to try something different, try something new, to do whatever it was going to take.
Stop the insanity cycle.
Yes, stop the insanity cycle. Wow. And I got very blessed in the sense that the medical staff, asked me if I wanted to go to treatment. I said yes, absolutely. But in the back of my mind thinking, here's another round to treatment. And I got sent to Springport. And I'm so grateful that I did. Just everything that I learned in there was everything that I needed to experience, and mind you, I'd had many setbacks, many times in treatment centers or in detoxes, or, tries at this or that, or therapy or programs, whatever, and I would fail, and I would fail, and I would fail. When I got here this time, it was, of course, I detoxed for 8 days because I was strung out on
everything.
Heroin, meth, alcohol, cocaine, benzodiazepines, you name it. It was in my system.
It wasn't even a trifecta. It was a multitude.
It was everything.
Wow.
Everything I could get my hands on. And that was the thing. I built up such a tolerance, right, to everything. And at a certain point, it's just the drug stopped taking effect. You can physically feel it, right? So you're definitely inebriated. But the thing that it was fixing in here when I first started using, it stopped fixing.
Yeah.
And I was using everything to try to get it to fix that again, and I couldn't.
You're
no
broken.
matter what, I was broken.
You're broken.
And so, I detoxed for 8 days in the facility, and then completed the 30-day inpatient, treatment program.
What was the detox experience this time through Springboard?
So, withdrawing from heroin and alcohol, especially simultaneously, let me explain it this way, right? So this is the best way I can explain it. The reason why heroin withdrawal is scientifically, kind of a nerd. The reason why heroin withdrawals are so brutal. When you fall asleep at night, your brain basically creates natural pain-killing chemicals. And so when you wake up throughout the day, whatever you're feeling or whatever, your brain is slowly releasing these chemicals. Here's just a very basic, elementary explanation of it. Well, when you're abusing opioids, when you fall asleep at night, your brain sees the synthetic opioids, the heroin, the Oxycontin, the Vicodin, the Percocet, whatever it is, the fentanyl these days, it sees that that's already in your brain, so it doesn't produce the natural pain-killing chemicals. Well, after a period of time, it just kind of shuts that down. Now it comes back, but it kind of shuts that down. So then when you come off of the opioids, your brain doesn't have any of the natural pain-killing chemicals.
Yeah.
And so it takes a few days for them to build back up. And so during that process is agony. And here's how I explain it. Here's why. From the moment we're born, we are decaying organic matter. Right. That's just the reality of it.
He's a better nerd at this than I am.
Our cells are constantly and consistently just splitting and dividing, right? And that's what creates, life and what's, so on and so forth. But without those chemicals, you're literally feeling yourself tear apart at an anatomic level from head to toe.
Wow. And what does Springboard do to help comfort that?
And I say we because I get to work there now, but we do have a medically assisted detox. So we have around-the-clock medical staff. We also use medications as well to help. And that was my experience when I was there, because I had detox cold turkey. But while I was there, they definitely used the medical approach to taper me down. So instead of just going cold turkey from all these drugs to nothing, they tapered me down on a medically assisted protocol with medical staff around the clock, comfortable place, plenty of food. So when you are ready to start eating, you can start to, get some of that nutrition in your body, water, fluids, all that kind of stuff. Just everything that still starts to heal your body physically is what takes place at Springboard's detox.
And then you move into
and then from there you move into the residential, you move into the internal, you move into the psychological, you move into the spiritual, you move into the emotional, and you move into that healing once you get straightened out in that physical aspect.
You have to detox, you have to be clear-minded, and then the real journey begins. And if I can correlate your story here a little bit, because something shifted at that last overdose internally.
Yes.
And now you're detoxed. Now you're willing to see things in a different manner.
Exactly.
To start the healing process. Before we get into that part, I was curious because you said your body was resistant to Narcan. How did the nurse revive you? How was you brought back to life?
So I believe that they were defibrillators.
Okay.
Because my heart, had stopped, and they were right. So my lungs, everything had just kind of shut down. And so I had overdosed before. First time I overdosed, I was 19. And I kind of came to, this is in Riverside, California, and I came to in an ambulance after an overdose, and I just remember the paramedics saying, "I've already given him so much Narcan, I don't know if I can give him any more Narcan." And I remember thinking well, that's not a good sign. And I went back out, and then came to in the hospital, and the doctor was, he was teasing me, he was calling me Narcan man, and he was telling me that my body was resistant to Narcan, and that heroin was an extremely dangerous drug for somebody like me. That is not enough for somebody like me to stay sober, though. It won't happen to me. I won't, whatever it is. Yeah. At the risk of your very own life, you just cannot stop.
So now you're back into the internal process at Springboard. At 29. Right. You're ready. Take me down that journey. So,
being in there, having my eyes kind of open to some stuff. I am a member, out of respect for the traditions, I won't, specify what, but I am a member of a 12-step program. Okay. And it is something that's very active in my life, and having, counselors who care and who are there to support you and help you through like these underlying areas, traumas, additional, whatever you may have going on, is super powerful. But coupling that with an active 12-step program, a recovery lifestyle, something to set you up for when you leave treatment, that was a big key, and those are the recovery advocates who primarily walk you through that. And I was really blessed with some really great people, being in my life, and like I said, I'd gone into institutions and jails and all these different places, and I used right after I left. And
something was clicking.
I didn't keep up with what this design was afterwards. And so that was a huge key, is when I left the residential treatment, I moved into the sober living facility. And, sober living is without a doubt, it's all extremely important. It's all very important. But that's the aspect that I feel like I was missing, because treatment for somebody like me,
long-term.
It's long-term. And it's really for life, but it's not anything to be, overwhelm yourself with, because it's just right here today. What can I do to stay active in a healthy lifestyle?
You go through the sober living part of it. That's what, a year there?
So it depends. Usually they ask for, a 90-day commitment, so it can be about 3 months,
Okay.
and that is enough time for some people. Some people go for a full year. Our program goes until 18 months if you like. But I became a house manager in that period of time, so I stayed for almost 2 years because that's what I needed.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. So, okay, now, you're at 29, you're admitted there, now you're at 31, basically, give or take.
Right.
And you're feeling like a new man, I take it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And now you're a house manager, and
Right.
so you're only 35. So in 4 years, this is who you are today. This is the new Isaac. So I want to pivot here
Okay.
to encourage our audience, because we did a lot of the nerd science background
Right.
stuff. So now it talks about how we can inspire our listeners, our audience. So you're now a house manager, you're working at Springboard, and then you get further up into management. there.
So,
What do
so
you
I
do?
wasn't working at Springboard yet.
Oh, okay. You're just a house
so I was
manager.
house manager.
Okay, so
yeah.
what were you doing in that time frame outside in the world? Apparently, I think you met a beautiful bride.
Yes, so I had, at about that time, I had met my now wife, and she had a beautiful little 3-year-old girl, who's now my 7-year-old daughter. And she had kind of her own story. At about that time, my daughter's biological father passed away from an overdose. So he had the same struggles that I do. He just wasn't as fortunate as I've been. So my daughter lost her biological father. Shortly after that, I'd kind of entered their lives. And at that time I was working on my GED, and we definitely really liked each other, and we've been dating for a couple months. But you're like, we're going to do this the healthy way. Like, I'm learning this totally different lifestyle. We're not going to move in together right away. So I actually moved to San Angelo, and I moved in with my buddy, Kenny McKenzie, his wife, Emily, because and I can say this because he's totally open with it, but he's in recovery. And so it was like a next stepping stone,
Like a
right?
sponsor.
Right. Well, I had a sponsor.
But like extra support.
Yes, just like extra support. Like
But I'm going to
recovery
stop
support.
you right there, because I'm trying to hold back tears here, y'all, because I want to put something alignment here on your story right there. So this beautiful young lady with a 3-year-old daughter meets you, who is working through recovery as well, lost her, father to her daughter, and now you are filling the gap for your little girl. But she, it's just amazing on what happens in the world. Like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so it's a pause there, because how else would that happen in the fake world, that you meet her and she's understanding of your past. She's been through it, and she's okay with you meeting her daughter, and now you get to fill in the role to be a dad to her. It's a beautiful story.
And the way that we actually had met, I had done an interview about recovery when I was coming up on 2 years sober for CBS News. And her and her husband at the time, before he passed away, he had seen it. Now, he and her had been separated just due to all the things going on that happens with, when you're dealing with a disease like that. So they weren't actually together anymore. But he saw that video clip that I'd done, and he sent it to her. And so she reached out to me just to kind of say, like, hey, 1, that's awesome, like, congratulations, but 2, do you think anybody ever really truly recovers from alcoholism and addiction? And she asked me that line, right? And then I have like this whole thing about how I feel about recovery, right? And that we absolutely do recover, and then I nerd out, right? And the reason why people get all weird about that word is because they confuse it with cured, right?
Yes.
Recovered means to be restored to a state of.
Mm-hmm.
Cured means to be absolved of all symptoms.
Yes.
And I'll never be cured.
Preach.
but I am today recovered.
Yeah.
Now that can change if I don't continue to do the things I need to do. But I went to this whole nerd out thing and like started like definitions of words and so on and so forth, and we developed this great friendship. To start out.
And then you're doing things right. You're in San Angelo.
Right.
And then somewhere along the lines you'll do.
So then I'm in San Angelo. But the reason why I talk about him sending her that video of me is because it was almost like God was working through it the whole time. It's not almost like it. I believe God was working through it the whole time, because when you think about it, he essentially handed off. He handed off, like he knew that he wouldn't be here much longer. and that he was going to lose that battle, you know, which a lot of my close friends have.
Kind of a
and he
doomsday
handed
thing,
off his most valued, his most valued things in life.
Well, he may not even be aware of what he did, but he opened the door.
Yeah, I don't.
Of her asking that question and giving hope back to her.
I don't think in any way he conscientiously
No.
did that. I think conscientiously he was probably trying to say like, hey, look, people really do recover. Like, you know, give me another chance. Honestly, it's probably what it was. And I don't blame him because, you know, my wife is great and that's
opened
her
up a
nature.
door for her
But I think
to see.
Right. I think that the way God was kind of setting it up was like he handed off his daughter to somebody who could then step in.
So
and
in the
take care of
timeline,
her.
if I got this right, you were already part of her life when her ex-husband passed away.
So he had sent her that video and then he passed away and then she reached out to me.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so then she's very protective of her daughter. So I still didn't meet her for a couple months.
That's awesome. Amen, Mom.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I love that she's like that. She's the most amazing mother I've ever, met. I just get to have her, watch her raise my daughter with me and it's amazing. So I moved to San Angelo and with a really good friend, and I was just kind of the next stepping stone. Somebody in recovery, somebody who I knew was really about this healthy lifestyle, and it was outside of it was just the next step. It was like a little bit more real world experience, but still in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
And also that's where I started my college career. So I took my first semester there at Howard College. In Amarillo, and it's funny because in San Angelo, and it's funny because I had just finished my GED, and Kenny's wife Emily, who I love to death, she's like, you're going to college. I was like, yeah, no, I know, like I'm going to college. She's like, no, like you're going to college. I said, yeah, no, like I'm totally going to college, but I was like fearful inside. And it's funny how God just puts these people in your life. Mm-hmm. And so she actually signed me up for college. She took all my information and she signed me up for school. And it's funny because she misspelled my last name because it's a very unique spelling. So when I actually went there, I had to go to the registrar's office and I had to correct the spelling of my last name to actually start. But she enrolled me.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate it. So I finished my first semester there, kind of got that real world experience and then decided to move in with the girls in Amarillo. So then I moved there, and which that was crazy, right? Because they were living in Amarillo, I was in San Angelo, and like every other weekend at least I was driving back and forth in a 2010 Toyota Corolla, which doesn't have cruise control. Mm-hmm. So you're like 6 hours this way, and then 6 hours back, and like just to get back to school.
If he wanted to, he would. Just to know that's a track every other weekend or so.
Yeah.
And getting to know her, and then you move in, and so now you've got a beautiful marriage. You're 4 years into your, I guess really 6 years into your recovery now.
A little bit about 5 years and 3 months.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Who's counting?
Give a little grace there. Yeah. And I'm a round-upper.
Yeah.
I'm actually horrible in math. I'm a nerd, but horrible in math. And
I'm a finance guy. I had to be like technically.
I love it. And manager, I'm like, get over yourself. But in that, I'm going to go into the victory. I kind of already know your answer to this is the fact that you're still going strong in your recovery.
Yeah.
And that you've got to marry a beautiful lady.
And so those are the keys is just, utilize everything I learned at Springboard, right? And then putting it into practice and then developing this personal relationship with God and carrying this out and helping other people and turning that around. And what that's developed into now is, over 5 years sober.
Mm-hmm. I want to get up and dance.
Happy, joyous and free, healthy, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I'm still super sassy. You can ask my wife. So I've got my own.
I see it too. Bless her.
Yeah, bless her. She puts up with a lot. I'm still wild. I'm still crazy. It's just channeled. But we actually married on June 19th. Not this year, but last year. So we've been together still almost 4 years, but we just celebrated our first year married. I got to become that little girl's daddy, and I'm the person who she knows as daddy, who she calls daddy, who she loves. Okay. So today I've been sober over 5 years. I'm healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I still have my flaws. I'm still wild. I'm still crazy. My wife can attest to that. You know that about me.
I thank her.
She's a blessing. Absolutely. God knew what he was doing. We got married, not this past June, but the June before. So we've been together almost 4 years, but married just over 1. I get
Still newlyweds.
Still newlyweds. Yeah, I get to be that wonderful little girl's daddy, and you know how I am with numbers. So I did the math a long time ago, and this Thanksgiving was very, very special for me because I have now officially been in my daughter's life and been her father for more than half of her life. So she has known me as her father longer than she didn't. Yeah. So to me, that was just kind of a tipping point. Like,
I just love y'all's relationship, and she adores you too.
I'm very, very blessed and lucky to be with her. So Springboard in all facilities in Texas have a rule that you cannot be employed for the first 2 years after leaving.
That's tying into how you work there. Okay.
Right. So for 2 years, I couldn't work there just a part, and I wanted to get back. I love that place, the miracles that can happen there. But it's a law. It's a state law. And so once 2 years was up, I was living in Amarillo with my wife and daughter, and I got a phone call from somebody who worked at Springboard here in Midland, and they were like, "We think you'd be perfect for this role out here. Would you consider moving back to Midland?" Yeah. And you got to know how much I love Springboard if I was willing to move back to Midland. And not for big oil field money, but to work at a local nonprofit. Yep. But that's how much Springboard means to me. So I came back, and my position was hybrid. I was an admissions specialist as well as the alumni coordinator. So I just kind of reached out to the community and kind of, talk to people who'd been through the program already.
In the HR mindset, totally a good fit.
And simultaneously help people get in who were then seeking treatment, who needed help.
And now you're wrapping up your bachelor's degree, and then you're moving.
So first I got my associate's in psychology simultaneously.
Oh wow, overachiever.
I got that at Amarillo College, and then I just kind of felt God guiding me to kind of behind the scenes kind of picture. Like I love to sit down and do one-on-one, but I'm not very patient, and so psychologists aren't supposed to be like, just knock it off, like as a sponsor, right? Like in the program I work, I can do that. Like to my guys,
so
I'm
you're just an internal psychologist.
Yeah, so just like to my guys, I'm like, are you serious right now? But you can't, as a psychologist,
you just have to
listen.
Now.
Yeah, so you just have to listen and be like, well, now you tell me, was that a good decision? I can't do that.
Okay, so you flipped
So I switched over. I love, so I switched. Once I got my associates, I switched my major, and I'm now working on my finance degree. I'm projected to graduate next spring, and then I'll begin working on my MBA, and then I'll be done with school, which my wife will be very happy about, more time at home. But that's
well worth it.
So right.
The sacrifice is there.
Right. And she's so great. She's so supportive.
I know she is. She's amazing.
Better. Yeah, you've been there.
She puts up with him, so she's amazing, bar none on that. But
right then and there, you got to say that's enough. She's getting into heaven, right? Yep. That's a guarantee.
Oh, it's Miss Isaac. Come right in.
Front row. Yeah, exactly. But during that time, my role had transitioned from the alumni coordinator in admissions. And admissions I loved because it was, people reaching out who needed help, and it was so easy to explain to them why I felt like this was the place for them because of my experience. It was just that simple. It was that basic. I could just tell them what I experienced.
You're the testimony guy.
Right.
Constant.
And it was
great marketing.
It was wonderful, which is funny because over time it kind of shifted, and then I got put into the finance department. It was actually another hybrid position. It was admissions still and finance. Okay. And then it shifted to where they needed somebody in business development and in marketing to get our name out there a little bit more so that we could continue to spread the word about the miracles that happen there. Mm-hmm. And so then I stepped out of admissions and it became hybrid finance, business development. And now it's just, we've really seen like how much, we can and want to grow. And that is largely based on a couple of things. One, the population expansion of the Permian Basin. Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, the expansion of the easily, readily accessible drugs, particularly fentanyl, which we see all the time.
Yeah, we do.
And how just rampant that stuff is, and all the overdoses just going through. I mean, it is insane. So I've stepped into full-time business development to get the word out there. And we brought in some other people to fill in the other roles and positions.
You have a great team over there. Great team.
We're very blessed. I work with wonderful people. We get to see the miracles happen. It goes hand in hand with my school. I have a supportive wife, a beautiful daughter, over 5 years sober. I like to hang out and, watch the football game on Sunday. I like to come home after work and get a hug.
Okay, so you're already going into the unplugging questions. So let me backtrack on one thing. So you mentioned a few of the mentors and the mentees, part of the things. In this journey, who makes Nate who Nate is today? this growing success story, which is why we do this platform, to tell your story and inspire infinite growth. Who would you give a little shout out to for helping you along the journey that you can? I know some of that stuff's confidential.
That's so hard. I mean, the my mom was a huge part of being there. When I was a kid. Kenny for giving me a place to come when I got out of treatment. The entire Springboard Center facility. As far as school goes, I've got Emily who signed me up. I've got my buddy Zach Nusser, who has been a guide throughout it. He already has his MBA, and he's kind of been guiding me through the process. As far as career-wise, I'd say David Chancellor and Joe Bell, the two people at Springboard, kind of taking me under their wing currently. So it just kind of depends on what area we're talking about,
No, this is unplugging, so it's everybody. Okay. It's all inclusive there. So those are great.
And then the final would be the one who deals with me day in, day out.
The beautiful wife.
My beautiful wife today. She's a huge shout out. I didn't even know how to send an email when I met her. I was trying to sign up, for school and get all that kind of stuff done. And I didn't really, I could send it, kind of receive it, but I didn't understand you could do anything more than that. And for school, they were asking me to do additional stuff. And so she and now it's funny because I'm doing Excel and all this kind of crazy stuff with statistics. And
if we just take a moment here in 5 years time frame,
right.
You're doing a bachelor's degree in finance, so that you're definitely learning computers, spreadsheets, numbers, emails,
IT
all this
stuff,
statistics,
right.
all that stuff. And that just goes to show that when you change your mindset,
exactly.
When you deal with, I'm gonna be like you as a psychiatrist, when you deal with your BS,
right.
And you get over all the excuses, all the complaints, all the grievances or whatever, and you do what you need to do for a better life. You get off that insanity cycle.
Right.
You can succeed in anything.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we want to do here on Unplug with Mel, is to encourage, no matter where you are in life, whether you are struggling with an addiction, or maybe it's different than that. Maybe you're at a crossroad and you don't know what the next step is. It might be having a friend send your stuff over to go back to school.
Right.
It could be asking a friend, hey, can I come sleep on your couch? I'm going through stuff right now. You never know, but in 5 years, if you go forward 5 years, you can have a whole different life, which you do. You're a testimony to that. So thank you for sharing for all of that.
Yeah.
We're going to go right back into that unplugging, because you can't have a podcast named Unplug with Mel without asking, what is Nate do to unplug, to recharge, to refocus, to simmer down that wildness a little bit, or let some of that wildness come out?
Right. A little bit of both, I guess.
Yeah.
Perfect question. I definitely, love to watch football.
Go Longhorns.
Oh man.
I had
to. My wife, it's funny because she loves and hates it, right? Because she hates just sitting there watching football, but she loves how much I love it. So she kind of has
she loves you.
Yes, exactly.
You. That's the single woman.
She is very supportive, I'll just say that. But I love to, it's kind of both, because I can relax and just kind of unwind and take my mind off of all the different areas in life that I'm trying to grow and develop and guide, and just, literally every area and facet of my life is incredible. So just to kind of step back on that, having a nice beautiful home to live in, and all of these wonderful things, right?
You did the work.
Right. And to come from literally, homeless to this beautiful home, to carless to this brand new 2024 car, to no job to an incredible job, from, high school dropout to college degree working on another one, to single to wife with a kid.
Will be rewarded.
Everything on the side. But here's the crazy thing, right? Here's the cool thing about all of it. None of those things are recovery. Right, no. Those are all byproducts of recovery, and I've got to keep my recovery first. And as long as I remember that, I'll get to enjoy all these wonderful things.
It's a mantra right there. It's reminding yourself every day to get up and do the work of recovery, or do the work of interpersonal, soft skills, whatever we need to work on, so that we get the byproduct. We get the nice house, the running car that has a warranty,
insurance on it,
all that adulting stuff.
Any area you name, God has blessed me in that area.
And having a faith, in your storyline or whatever, you're doing all that, finding the void. There you go.
Right. That's where it was.
That's where it was.
And that's just a relationship that I needed to cultivate, and then today just need to maintain. Yeah. And as long as I do that and I keep that relationship with God first, everything else falls into place. And I mean, I can't even explain it. It's like my house literally has a white picket fence around it. I'm not kidding. You've seen it.
I love
it's
it.
got the. You've seen it. It's like
a
a Hallmark movie. It's disgusting. It'll make you want to vomit.
I'm pretty sure your wife has decorated it as in the Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
I'm coming to visit, sweetheart.
Yeah.
The last question of this podcast is where we leave towards the audience a quote, something that maybe you've heard, or even something that you have in your pocketbook of wisdom to encourage those that are listening, what they're going through. What was something you heard or that you've kept your mantra in this life, in this journey?
So there's so many, wonderful, beautiful, quotes out there. I think things that help me, I won't quote the entire thing, but if you're familiar with the Man in the Arena speech by former President Roosevelt, I would just suggest looking that up. Just Google it if you're interested. And the whole thing is just about trying. Whether you succeed or fail, it's just about being in the arena, and it's just about trying. Another one is by John Wooden, and that's things turn out the best for those who make the best out of the way things turn out. To paraphrase. And it's just having that mentality. It's adopting that mentality of just kind of accepting things the way that they are, right? Not trying to resist it, not trying to fight it, accepting that's the way that it is, but not accepting it all the way to your grave. Accepting that's the way it is today, but understanding that you have the capacity to change that if you're willing to move towards it, if you're willing to drive towards that. And it may sound strange, but just simple words, sometimes singular words, are what I put my focus on. Words like discipline, tenacity, grit. I will just put a mindset of focus on that, because your life turning around is not an overnight matter, right? And it's not an easy matter, but it's more than possible. The difference between those who are able to do it and those who don't is this simple: acts against the will. That's all it is. Doing things not only when you're motivated to do it, but having the discipline to do it when you don't want to do it. If you're willing to make that leap, if you're willing to do something that you're not willing to do, and you step out in faith and in action, and you turn it into a consistent behavior, the world is your oyster.
We could keep on talking. I just love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Nate, for joining. I want to make a little side note. I've got cute turquoise boots, and I'm looking down, and you've got Starry Night socks. The nerds alert, man. Nerd alert.
Van Gogh painted these in a sight word. He painted the Starry Night sight word, which is nerd alert. Perfect for me. You know what I mean? Like, I just love it. It's like,
I love it. I have a shower curtain.
Oh, do you?
Mine of that, and it has the TARDIS on there. That's how dirty I am. Well, we're wrapping up our time here. We hope that hearing Nate's story inspires you to make a change in your life, whether you're on that insanity cycle or you just know deep down inside that you're missing something. Building your tribe, building your village, whatever it may be, that support. Don't do it alone. Reach out with Unplug with Mel if you have any questions. I would love to connect Nate with you guys. You can probably find him on LinkedIn, as well as me. You can hear this podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Thank you, Nate, for joining.
Yeah,
I enjoyed this very much. This is incredible.